Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. In the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 22nd, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, we were bedazzled over the weekend as several college football teams kicked off spring college football. Not practice, but football games actually over the weekend.
Yeah.
Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They kick it off every day, regardless of the season.
They kick off every day. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really do appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing, Big C. They were pausing in the land down under, Big C, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help, Big C. Why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, we're at catastrophic numbers here in America. Unfortunately, over the weekend, we reached 500,000 deaths from COVID-19. A lot of those deaths, Charlton, took place from veterans that have served this country. But we also have another disease that's afflicting veterans, Charlton, called suicide. That more than 24 a day take their own lives, Charlton, in an unfortunate situation here in America.
Yeah.
We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, but there has to be more concern amongst everybody about our great veterans who have served this country. Think about our veterans who have allowed us to have the way of life that we have here in America. And unfortunately, many of them take their own lives because they feel forgotten about and left out. We should not treat our veterans that way as a country, Charlton. Beyond the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number that we give out, we need it to become an everyday issue amongst the news and politicians of this country.
Yeah, we will do our part, Big C. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. You can definitely get some help for our veterans. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king, Barry Bonds. When you reach out to him, just tell him Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, putting people back to work, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage on the wholesale side, the #1 lender in the country. Also want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. Man, I'm telling you, I know it's Black History Month, Big C. I know it's supposed to be wintertime, but I'm telling you, it's about 70 degrees here in Northern California, and it's too hot for me to be wearing a jacket for the winter, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we don't get that luxury here down south. I mean, we've had all type of inclement weather going on, whether it's rain, whether it's snow, whether it's just freezing. So you guys enjoy getting your tans out there.
we get a year-long tan. It's free too, Big C, if that makes sense to you. It's all fair in love and war. And speaking of tans, NASA, when I was growing up, I was watching a TV show by Gene Roddenberry. It was called Star Trek. And they were always looking to boldly go where no man has gone before. But they left out the word woman, Big C. But I guess he assumed if there was a man, there's a woman someplace, unless we birthed ourselves, if that makes sense to you. But I also want to say congratulations. NASA spacecraft, a black woman, Katherine Johnson, the late Katherine Johnson. She starred in the movie Hidden Figures, Big C. She was a mathematical genius, and her calculations allowed man, in fact, the United States, to land on the moon some 59 years ago, lifted off this weekend, and it landed on the space station on Monday. Just to be candid, it's amazing how it landed in Black History Month, and it would not have been possible, just like life, without the help of a black woman, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, black people have been involved in a lot of mathematical equations in the United States over the decades and centuries, Charlton. They've just always been omitted from the history books because whites wanted to take credit for their accomplishments.
Yeah, it's a lot of things that African-American women have done all over this place, man. The spacecraft named for Hidden Figures mathematician, it launched from Virginia, Big C, on the February 20th, Northrop Grumman. I mean, it's so many things when we think about space, the final frontier, and we're just trying to have a chance to live together on Earth, and now we're looking at going out into space. But the SS Katherine Johnson, a Northrop Grumman capsule due to arrive at the International Space Station today, Big C. So it did land today, and some 8,000 pounds of science and research supplies and vehicle hardware. The cargo is going to help astronauts with a variety of projects, learning about muscle loss using worms, investigating astronauts and sleep quality, experiments for disease treatments, and upgrades to the life support system, testing equipment for moon missions, and more. This seems a lot like the late Gene Roddenberry when he created the movie Star Trek, the TV show. It's so apparent now that every country, at least industrialized country, is trying to put people out in space more often, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, all the industrialized countries have. That's what the International Space Station stands for. It's been a long-running space experiment, Charlton, from around the world that has gone on for years.
Yeah, it's gone on for years. She lived to be 101 years old. That's good living. Really appreciate the fact that they actually made a movie about her, and so many other people of color have done so many great things in this great country, Big C, and to be a part of the United States space. I'm thinking the space industry is amazing. I know people are talking about going to Mars, going outside of the solar system. It's amazing how much is out there to conquer, and a black woman here in the United States help the United States get their feet in space, if that makes sense to you. I also want to talk, I know we have a lot of sports to cover, but I love just a story that I want to tell you as far as black history and some of the injustices that black Americans have overcome and still overcome. And that's why I think it's so important when people hear about what black Americans have achieved. Oftentimes they were swimming against the current, Big C. They didn't get there because somebody tried to help them. They had to swim against the current to get there. At age 83, Joe Legion, Big C, now is a free adult. For the first time in his life, the Pennsylvania man, America's longest serving prisoner, sentenced to life imprisonment. As a juvenile, if you can imagine, as a juvenile being sentenced to life in prison for a crime that many people said he did not do, Big C. He was released at 68 years. Think about this. After 68 years in prison, he had been behind bars since February 1953. Imagine that, Big C. When Dwight Eisenhower had just become president, he was sentenced to life at 15 for a role in a robbery and stabbing spree carried out by a group of drunk teenagers. 2 of the 8 people stabbed passed away, but Legion insists that he did not kill anybody. He was innocent, Big C. And we know he's innocent because he's released. He could potentially have received clemency as early as the 1970s, but he never applied to have his sentence commuted, the Philadelphia Inquirer reports. This is so important because the Supreme Court, they also struck down the Voting Rights Act, and people got to understand when I tell you this, Big C. the Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life sentences for juveniles was unconstitutional. He was resentenced to 35 years to life in 2017, but he refused to apply for parole. And I just want to get your thoughts on a man that was sent to prison as a teenage boy for something he did not do. And it's amazing that it's happened too many times, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, what's that old adage, Charlton, a jury of your peers? In
Yeah.
1953, I beg to differ. He didn't get anybody black on the jury, Charlton, saying that this man was potentially innocent. They were all white, and they were all prejudgmental prior to even sitting down, hearing the evidence. The opportunity to lock up a black child, Charlton, for life in prison, even though the Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional to give a juvenile a life sentence. Once he turned 18, Charlton, he was supposed to have been released
let out
because he was no longer a child.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be put back out into the public sector. They didn't do that, Charlton. This has been the injustice against black people ever since they've come to this country and still goes on today. I was watching on the news over the weekend where there were some police officers in Southern California stopped a black man for crossing the street on a red light in the intersection, even when there was no traffic.
Yeah.
And they stopped him, Charlton, and they did not say he was under arrest. They wanted to question, which you don't have to stop as a private citizen when the police just stop you on the street. You have the ability to walk away if you have not committed a crime or you are not a suspect. They knew he wasn't a suspect, Charlton. Eventually, they shot this man dead for jaywalking.
Yeah.
A black man, Charlton, walking across the street on a red light, lost his life by two white police officers because he did nothing wrong. They just had the ability to kill him. When they got out the car, they were walking with the taser in their hand.
Yeah.
They had prejudgmental, Charlton, that they were going to dehumanize this man in the middle of the street in broad daylight.
Yeah, and people might say, well, that's a very sad thing that happened, but it goes back to a lot of things with the Supreme Court, gutting the Voting Rights Act in 2013. They pacified a lot of black men by letting people focus on sports only, and that's why this stuff still happens, Big C. The child, think about this. As a child, he was sent there. So he's now out of prison in 2021. He's 83 years old, and he's grown, and he realizes that he missed all of his life for something he did not do. I want people to chew on that as we have our brethren arguing about who's bigger, stronger, and faster, and not even paying attention to the criminal justice system that has incarcerated too many people, especially people who did nothing wrong, Big C. It's all fair in love and war, but I had to bring that out for Black History Month. I also want to just make sure that I love what people do in the world of sports and also politics. There's just so much going on in the sports universe. All life came from Africa. And too many times, our young brethren have only been focused on talking about what we do in a uniform. And that's okay too, but I have to get that story out there, Big C, for Black History Month. And I hope and pray that the rest of his life is a lot better than the past, that he did not do anything wrong. I want to go to the land down under in the world of tennis. Now, I'm a little bit cynical, so sometimes I look at things maybe a little bit different than people do for the most part. Maybe that's a good or a bad thing. But I want to just congratulate Naomi Osaka. She defeated Jennifer Brady in the Australian Open women's title. I congratulate also Jennifer Brady for getting there. That was supposed to be Serena Williams' thing, Big C, but Naomi Osaka did her thing. But it was one of the organizers of the event at the ceremony turned around to Brady and said, "You'll be here next year." And I just thought that was such a slap in the face of a young woman who's never lost a set at the Australian Open. But anyway, be that as it may, Naomi Osaka came into the Australian Open as the number 3 ranked women's single player in the world, Big C. That means she's the number 3 ranked player in the universe. Think about this. She'll leave the event looking to reclaim the number 1 spot. Osaka, she looked like the women's single player in the world throughout the Australian Open. After toppling Serena Williams in the semifinals, she looked poised to take home her 4th Grand Slam, Big C. Now think about this. When the organizer looked to the loser of the event, Brady, she did a good job, but she got swept, and she told the loser, "You'll be here next year," as the person who's won it for the 4th time. But she did not disappoint. Saturday defeated Jennifer Brady in straight sets, 6-4, 6-3, to win the 2021 Australian Open. and the organizer told the loser, "You'll be here next year." Big C, your thoughts?
Well, maybe you misconstrued what he meant by that, Charlton. He told her that she would be a loser again next year. He never told her that she was going to win the tournament. He understands how dominant Naomi Osaka is as she creeped through the Australian Open, Charlton, without any disruption or a hiccup. She dominated every opponent that she saw.
Yeah. No, it was a lady. I just want to get it right. It was a female that told her. I mean, it was funny. It was like looking to the person that lost the Super Bowl and saying, "Hey, you'll win it next year." It's all fair war. Sometimes you pay homage to the person that won more than the person that did not win. Osaka rolls after through her first set. She opened the match with a service win at love, but the rest of the first set would be anything but easy after breaking Brady to take a 3-1 lead. Brady broke right back, helped out by a double fault by Osaka at a deuce, and to get the first set on the serve. Osaka led 5-4 and trailed 15-40, but was able to rally and break Brady's serve and win the first set. And this is interesting. I hope the young girls all over the world are watching and inspired by what she's doing. And Brady said, Osaka, after the match, Osaka has high praise for Brady. They both had high praise for each other, but I thought it was just ironic that the judge gave more praise to the person that lost, encouraging her that you'll be here next year.
Well, sometimes you don't always appreciate the color that's in front of you, Charlton, but when Osaka's walking out there dominating somebody that you're pulling for, you try to uplift them in every way that you can.
Yeah, Chrissy Everett, maybe because they're both from the United States, but Chrissy Everett was also saying how Brady could pull the upset because she's been working really hard. But I'm thinking, at some point in time, you got to
Chris Everett's always been a racist towards black tennis women, Charlton. If you look at all the vitriol that she has spewed during the broadcast with all the dog whistles that she has used against the Williams sisters for the past 15 years that she's been a broadcast on television, everyone who's of color understands what type of person that Chris Everett is.
Yeah, she was very apparent by calling out Brady and saying how if she could just do this better, she could win. If she could just serve down the middle more, she'll win. And the girl got swept, but at the same time, she was saying, Naomi Osaka's done a good job. She makes more money than any other tennis player. I guess that's more important. I told you, I'm cynical, Big C. But when somebody wins, you usually heap praise on them. That's just my opinion. But people can do what they want to do, and oftentimes women of color, they face more than just their opponent when they're on the tennis court, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, like I said, Chris Everett's been a racist on television for a long time. The vitriol that she has used with the dog whistle against the black female tennis players of America is that they've risen to greater heights than she ever did, Charlton, and she's been totally cynical of their success behind the mic.
Yeah, for people that doubt it, go back and listen to it. Just listen to it. It's like she had a hard time heaping praise on Naomi Osaka. They kept talking about how much money she's making as opposed to how many behind she's whipped, if that makes sense to you. It's all fair, love and war, but congratulations, Naomi Osaka. If words, they say sticks and stones will break your bones, but words won't hurt you. That woman has so much future ahead of her. She's only 23 years old, Big C. Also, in the world of tennis, something that might make Everett a little bit happier, Cloud9, Djokovic wins his 9th Australian Open, 18th slam, Big C. It's amazing. Used to improve serving along with his usual relentlessness, returning in baseline excellence to grab an 11 of 13 games in one stretch and beat Medvedev 7-5, 6-2, and 6-2 for a third consecutive Australian Open trophy. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Djokovic is just the most dominant player on the hard surface in the world right now, Charlton. And this is his 18th Grand Slam title, and he has no signs of slowing down anytime soon.
No, it made me want to get out and get my tennis game going, but maybe it's the shoes. I couldn't serve as hard as some of these people. Maybe I got to get different shoes, Big C, or maybe just more experience. But think about what Djokovic did. 9 triumphs in the Australian, alongside 5 at Wimbledon, 3 at the U.S. Open, and 1 at the French Open, Big C. The math looks pretty good for him. He's about a year younger than Nadal, 6.5 years younger than Federer, and he said that he does enjoy the success every single time, even more, Djokovic says, because I know that the longer time passes, the more difficult it's going to become. But he can fool the tennis ball by disagree. He's getting better and better as he gets older, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he understands the game more, Charlton, the mathematics of the sport. And that's where you have that mental savvy come into play. But Djokovic, is a machine out on the court, Charlton. He's almost like the Terminator.
Yep.
He is stern. He's, definitive about what he's doing. He's expressionless when he's playing the game.
And like the Terminator, he'll be back. That's definitely sure. He's 33 years old, so he's 10 years older than Naomi Osaka, Big C. He's from Serbia and won 6 of the last 10 majors and will stay at number 1 in the rankings at least through March 8th, and that will give him 311 weeks there, breaking another mark also held by Federer. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that means he's been on top for a long, long time, Charlton, and he's not slowing down. And everybody looks at trying to climb the mountain. That's where Djokovic is on the top of it.
Yeah, it's amazing how, at this time in life, seeing the great Serena Williams doing her thing and Djokovic doing his, Big C, we're at a great time to see not only excellent tennis, but we're seeing some of the people who are setting records. It's not as if we have to look back 30 years and say, well, back in the 80s, you should have seen this great tennis player. We're seeing it now, but even as dominant as tennis is, maybe it's the lack of being able to get out and be around a lot of crowds. It was something to have the crowd there that energized the play on the surface also. Does that make sense to you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I think these players are going to perform regardless. They have a limited crowd in the arena. I mean, all athletes drive off of the crowd enthusiasm when they're hearing the roars, Charlton. And when you're used to having a packed house, I guess a half-packed house will do.
Yeah, a half-packed house will do. It's all fair and level war. Really looking forward to more great tennis being played as people get the chance, irrespective of what happened with COVID. I want to jump to the world of college football, and it's amazing because, I haven't been sleeping a lot lately. I just haven't, Big C. I was staying up trying to watch the Australian Open. Sometimes I didn't go to bed till 3 o'clock. That's not good for you when you get up at 6 where it's all fair and level war. But college football, Lindsey Scott Jr. and Keen Grander each passed for a pair of touchdowns at Nicholas State. They opened the season with an 83-7 win over Division II Lincoln, Big C, on Friday night. Big C, they should have some type of a run the clock. When you get 50 and the other team has 3, run the clock 87-3 for a football. Big C, your thoughts?
I think they might have been running the clock, Charlton, to keep them from getting to 100. But the little bit people know that spring football is actually college football for those teams that opted out in the fall.
Yeah, it's college for the teams that opted out in the fall. And for the ones that are deciding to play, it's amazing. But 87, that's a lot. Maybe the other team forgot it was a real game. They thought it was practice, Big C. Practice? Like Allen Iverson. You talk about practice? No, it was a real game, Big C. It was a program record for points in a game, and the largest margin of victory for a Southland Conference team since 2009. It was 8 players scored a touchdown run for the Colonials, who finished with 234 yards rushing on 42 carries. The Gene Dixon had 5 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. Deontay Cosley caught 3 passes, 48 yards and 2 scores. And then Tevin Bush had 4 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown. Also ran for a score. Torrey Hicks ran 16 times, 71 yards for the Blue Tigers. Big C, your thoughts?
As a defensive coordinator, Charleston, you got to understand, what are you going to say to your players after getting a shellacking like that, giving up 87 points?
Yeah. All you can say is, are you okay? Because, I feel bad for the team that got 3 points. I don't feel bad for the team that got 87 points. But at some point in time, you think they sent the memo to everybody that it was a live game, not just practice? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think there's little biological clocks we're off to playing spring football here, Charlton.
Yeah.
Not expecting for the other opponents to be prepared, just like they weren't.
Yeah, that's not nice, though. It's not. You should always be nice to. If you're beating people down like that, it's pretty bad. But it's all fair level war. You think about it also in college football. Gronkowski's 3 total touchdowns helped South Dakota State top Northern Iowa by the score of 24-20. Big C. Mark Gronkowski passed for 2 touchdowns, including a 1-yarder to Pierre Strong with 19 seconds left, and ran for another to help South Dakota State beat Northern Iowa by the score of 24-20 on Friday night. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think Northern Iowa wish they had Kurt Warner still in uniform back there playing for himself.
Yeah.
They came up short in that season opener, but they weren't as embarrassed as their previous team that got blown out by 84 points.
Yeah, 84. 84 points is the big beatdown, Big C. But you give up 87 and lose 87-3. But maybe they'll improve in their game coming up next week. It's all fair level war. Wierzchowski, think about this young man playing spring football, only a freshman, 19 of 29 passes, 194 yards, had no interceptions, Big C, which is good for spring football. Strong finished 91 yards rushing on 22 carries, had 6 receptions, 31 yards. Zach Hines had 90 yards receiving on 5 catches for South Dakota State. They are 1-0 and also 1-0 in the Missouri Valley Conference. The teams kicked off an unprecedented spring slate of FCS football games after the fall season was suspended by COVID-19 pandemic. Not only are they playing in spring, there's a mindset they got to get used to. They're not comfortable playing for games that count, but they are comfortable playing spring football. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, think about this, Jonathan. We haven't seen spring football since the United States Football League. Not only that, in 4 months, teams will be back out in practice to get ready for the fall football season.
Yeah, they will be. And I know when I was back in college playing spring football, that's when you're working what you got to do to get better. So I wonder what it's going to be for these players, for the seniors, Big C, that go on and they finish this season and they're going to get ready, hopefully some of them for the NFL draft. There may be a handful that get ready for the NFL draft. Do you think that gives them an opportunity to maybe do this? I'm not going to say it permanently. That wouldn't make any sense. But they do have the chance to be seen more so than the guys that played D1 that finished playing right around Christmas. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it makes it tough on those players, Charlton, because if you think about it, the draft will be occurring while their season is still going on. And so, they probably won't even have a time to work out for scouts. I know you can see their games on tape and stuff.
Yeah.
But, it's going to be an odd scenario this year when the draft comes around, as we talked about last week.
Yeah, it really is. But I know players will make the most of it no matter what it is. Ironically, what we're seeing now is interesting because a lot of these programs are HBCU programs, Big C, and other Division II programs around the country. And there's always a chance to get the media exposure because the main Blue Bloods are not playing football right now. They're focused on basketball and getting into March Madness. So guys that can make the most of it, and you mentioned that they're going to have the NFL draft going on while the season is going on. Does that, in your opinion, add any advantage for the players that they can be seen right now in real-time action, whether they have NFL stamina or not? Big C, your thoughts?
I think that a lot of teams have already precast the die, Charlton, about players that they have on their radar that they plan on drafting. A lot of times you get players from HBCUs, Charlton, that end up being free agents in the NFL because they can get talented players at a less cost.
Yeah, at a less cost to get talented players. But we know that the NFL, there's a lot of kids that came out of the HBCUs that are doing their thing in the world of the NFL. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk more about, do you need to put your belongings in a safe, Big C, when you're coaching a football game, or do you just keep them in your pocket? We'll take the Big C pause. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll see all of our apps pop up from anywhere in the world. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. I'm telling you, the good thing about college football is you get to go out there and do something you love. Whether it's spring or fall kickoff, a lot of players are doing what they love. But then coaches, sometimes, if you got the money, you might want to realize on a brand new car, they put locks on it, Big C. In a brand new house, they put locks on the doors. Sometimes you can't even go into the bank because they haven't unlocked the bank doors yet, Big C. Primetime Deion Sanders says he was robbed of his wallet and watches during the first game at Jackson State as a head coach. Primetime Deion Sanders debut at Jackson State football Coach, looked like a reason for celebration after the fall season was delayed because of COVID-19. And the Tigers opened up the primetime era with a 53-0 win. I guess nobody got the word on the defensive coordinator side yet, Big C, over Edwards Waters, Big C, on Sunday. Prior to the game, Sanders got a visit from former Dallas Cowboy teammate, fellow Hall of Famer Troy Aikman, and Sanders said it moved him to tears. All seemed well in the western Mississippi, Big C. That's until Sanders' post-game news conference. The first-year head coach was happy with the team's performance, but he told reporters he was robbed of his cell phone watches and credit cards during the game. What a shame that you got to have a locker even when you're at work, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I don't think that's changed from anywhere. You got to learn to lock the doors behind you, or at least keep security in the locker room, Charlton, to oversee your belongings. But, you know, here's Deion. You know, he's always been flashy, carrying a lot of jewelry, big-time watches, Charlton. And, you know, normally he's going to have a little bit of cash in his pocket. So I think he learned his lesson. Go to the game broke.
Yeah, go to the game broke. It's ironic because I know sometimes a lot of guys are flashy, and no one should have anything robbed, but they do have alarms and they have lockers for a reason. You can go to the bank and put it in a safe deposit box or whatever you got to do, but don't take valuables that you're going to miss if somebody grabs them. It's a lesson that even my son learned. He was at the gym. This was before COVID showed up, and it's a world, I guess, nationally known gym. He was just working out like the other 100 people, 200 people in the gym, and he left his wallet in his backpack, and by the time he left, his wallet was still there, so he didn't notice that his money was gone until he got ready to go and buy something at the snack stand, Big C. Somebody had stolen his money, and I told him it's a lesson to learn. If you're going to go to the gym, they have lockers for a reason, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think a lot of kids have gone through that experience. We were at a Christmas tournament decades ago when I was in high school, and they went through all our lockers and took everything. I just got a new watch for Christmas from my grandfather. I had $40 in my pocket, Charlton, and we were out of town at this Christmas tournament, and they went in while we were out there playing basketball and went through everybody's locker. So somebody had a pass key even back in those days.
Yeah, yep. You know, it is COVID. A lot of people out of work. So every time you see, if somebody is hungry, they'll find a way to get around and eat something or grab something that don't belong to them. Hopefully Deion has enough money saved up from playing football that he'll be okay, Big C. I'm pretty sure he has enough left over that he won't miss going out buying another Timex watch. Big C, your thoughts?
I think it just said time on this. What no message
If it's a ticking Rolex, it's not real. The real Rolex, they don't tick, they just roll. Big C, it's all fair level war. Hopefully he'll get all of his stuff back. But maybe somebody needs the money more than he did. It's all fair level war. You know, we talked about opening up our show with Hidden Figures and Ms. Johnson that helped create the launch of the America's NASA space program into space, Big C, by understanding mathematics. Oftentimes, we talk about the Australian Open, and there was a woman from Australia. She was one of the organizers, and she thanked Brady for losing. Effusively, she seemed more disappointed that she lost than she was that Naomi Osaka won. I mean, maybe I look too much into things, Big C. And sometimes women have a hard time. I may get in trouble for saying this, but it won't be the first time. I was told this by a woman friend of mine, and she ran for a Miss California pageant. She had all the looks that women would like and men would like too. And I remember talking to her, just having a conversation. This was many years ago, and she told me that women tend to hate her because she's considered pretty. And I said, well, that's not true. Women support each other all the time. She said, no, Charlton, women are catty. And it reminded me where the broadcaster, Chrissy Everett, was so, in my opinion, insulting toward Naomi Osaka by during the game. She was trying to do a Tony Romo by saying what the tennis player should do. She should aim more down the center of the court and don't try to go to the edges. She was trying to coach. Maybe she was trying to send messages to whoever's listening on TV or by some electronic device to try to say, if you do this, you have a better chance of winning. And I found that women tend to be more catty, but that's coming from a woman, Big C. Have you experienced that from your female friends as well, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, everybody's competitive in life. If you're not a competitive person, then you might as well just give up. And so you're always looking for an opportunity to get yourself an advantage, regardless of whether it's in politics, whether it's in sports, whether it's in education, Charlton. Everybody doesn't play fair.
Yeah, well, that's very well said. And Deion Sanders just found out not everybody plays fair. Some people buy their Rolex, other people pick them up, if that makes sense to you. But I want to talk about this equality that women don't get also. You notice people talk about the GOAT, Big C, like who's the GOAT? Is it Jordan? Is it LeBron? Is it Bill Russell? Is it Brady? Is it Tiger Woods? Is it the great Jack, Big C? Like the GOAT is always a conversation, for the most part, when it comes to men. But in sports, how do you define the GOAT? And this is what I ask my women friends, because I've always thought that women supported each other. Like a lot of guys say, hey man, that's a good looking suit, that's a good looking tie. We always talk about Arthur Blank, how he probably even has his socks homemade or handmade, Big C. Arthur Blank he's probably the best dressed man in sports that owns a sports team, owner of the Atlanta Falcons and many other sports programs, also part owner of Home Depot. But when you think about the GOAT when it comes to women, it's someone that you have been watching and revealed over the years on television. Simone Biles, not the only one frustrated about the exclusion of women, but she says she feels frustration at the endorsements, Big C, of male-dominated GOAT conversations. It's just the latest example of women being left out of the GOAT conversation, and it matters especially because they're also left out of the money to be made. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you look at it and you look at some of the great female athletes, Charlton, that we've had throughout time, that have dominated over the decades, and even now in the modern day, when they talk about the GOAT conversation on television or even anywhere, Charlton, they're talking about people that they see on television all the time.
Yeah.
You talk about Jordan. Jordan won a paltry 6 NBA titles. How many players have 6 NBA titles? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has 6 of them, Charlton.
Yeah.
When you think about the Boston Celtics, there are 4 players with the Boston Celtics that have 8. Bill Russell has 11.
Yeah.
And they're never even put into the GOAT conversation. So the GOAT conversation is all about modern television and marketing, Charlton. It's not about the greatest athletes of all time.
Yeah, and for women, and again, go back and watch the Chrissy Everett, the commentator. I mean, if you care to, people don't have to, but of the Australian Open, she was almost pulling. You're supposed to be non-biased when you're on the commentator on television, but she was pulling for Brady to win as opposed to the one who won and dominating the world of tennis. But female athletes are tired of being forgotten when it comes to conversations about the greatest athletes of all time. And one of those forgotten GOATs isn't staying quiet about it. Simone Biles, one of the most decorated gymnasts of all time. So many GOATs. Like, so who's your GOAT? The illustration on Instagram included Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali is the greatest in my opinion. Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, and numerous others. Actual GOATs, Big C. She sent a list of athletes, women athletes, that a lot of people may not even think about. She would have liked to see represented. But like I said to Simone Biles, you have not because you ask not. If there's anything you want in life, you got to be the one that makes sure you're asking for it. Don't expect other people to do the asking for you. But just something that she said, Katie Ledecky, Big C, Alex Morgan, Sue Bird, Simone Manuel, Allison Felix, Lindsey Vonn, Megan Rapone, and the Williams sisters, Big C. She did not name herself, but there's no question that she should also be included in the list. I would just ask her to name yourself, because it's a pretty sad dog that won't wag his own tail. And for women that speak up like men, sometimes they're called a nasty word. You know how POTUS said women that are powerful are nasty when he said about black women? Let them call you nasty, but now they call you Miss Vice President. You got to advocate for yourself, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you have to advocate. She did advocate for herself, Charlton, by posting this article. When you think about it, she is the one who spoke up where everybody else wanted to stay silent and sit in the back. But when you talk about the decoration of female athletes in America, you were talking about the Australian Open, how many titles Serena Williams has won, how Naomi Osaka is on top of the world now, Charlton. When we think about Sue Bird and her accomplishments in college, Olympic, and professional basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many great athletes, female athletes over the decades, Charlton. But anytime you get a sports show that comes on, they're always talking about just the male athletes. Who is the GOAT?
Yep.
Tom Brady, like I said, 7 Super Bowl titles. that makes him the greatest of all time. I mean, Bill Russell still has 11. People don't realize Bill Russell was a world-class high jumper. He could have went to the Olympics in high jumping as well as he did in basketball, where he won an Olympic title there, Charlton. So when we think about the omitting of women in a male-dominated broadcast industry, as well as sports figures around the world, Charlton, they're being discriminated against.
Oh, they are. In fact, I think the women's soccer team for the World Cup, they're actually suing for equal pay, and it should probably get more status as we get around to the summer. Though she'll most likely talk about that more. But that's so much.
Charlton, the U.S. women's soccer team has won 3 world titles.
Yeah.
The U.S. men's soccer team has won 0.
0. Yeah.
So, and they're getting 3 times as much money as the women.
Yeah.
For what? For losing?
Maybe Chrissy Evans should speak for them, Big C. She's for the men. She likes talking more about the people that lose than the people that win. But you're right. And Simone Biles is right too. But you gotta be like that barking dog. My neighbor has a barking dog. He just barks and barks and barks. It's like, man, shut that dog up. And I was asking him, man, your dogs bark a lot, huh? He said, yeah, that's my alarm. So it's all fair enough war. But Simone Biles, she's won more medals than any American gymnast in history. in history, Big C. And that going back to the Big Bang Theory. She won more than any gymnast in history. Chew on that for a moment. Yes, she's consistently forgotten whenever people talk about the greatest of all time. And I think, and as Big C Sports, I love just giving her that platform and then talking about her. And I appreciate, because, I want to say something too. In every program that we talk about, and as we end every program, we talk about no excuse for domestic violence, etc. We know in this country women are battered every 20 seconds, mostly by a man. And a lot of those women, they sit there and they stay in that relationship. And you wouldn't even know it, because as some friends have told me, they hit them in the stomach. They don't slap them upside the head, they hit them in the stomach or in the back or where they have clothes on. And so a lot of women are embarrassed to say anything. They just keep it to themselves. But just like Simone Biles, you got to advocate for yourself and do it every single day. You don't just do it for you do it for the young women that are coming up behind you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I go back to the '84 Olympics in Los Angeles when Mary Lou Retton became the American darling when the U.S. team won the first overall title in women's gymnastics. And she got endorsement after endorsement, Wheaties boxes, everything else. She still has an endorsement last year, Charlton, I saw on television. She was white, though, Charlton, and she won 1 time. You think about Simone Biles and her legacy being the most decorated female gymnast of all time in the world, not just in America, in the world.
In the world.
You think about if she was white, how would the media treat her, Charlton? She would be on every endorsement commercial that you could ever look at, every magazine cover, every broadcast sports network, Charlton, if she was white.
Yeah. So call those sponsors and let them know that you won. And sometimes you just gotta knock a little bit harder as people of color. We know that.
They know that she won. But the problem is that you as an advertiser, you don't want to say that black is the best that they can be in the United States.
Yeah.
What you're doing is saying that all those white women that won in the past, those young girls, that they were never as good as this black woman that's dominated. You spoke about that at the Australian Open from Chrissy Evans. Here it is, she's pulling for the white girl that's losing.
Yeah.
Yet the most dominant woman down in Australia was Naomi Osaka, a woman of color.
Yeah.
And she never was praising Naomi Osaka. Here it is, it goes against all of her morals and thoughts to praise the black women. Like I said, for the last 15 years, she's used nothing but vitriol on the broadcast when the Williams sisters were playing, Charlton, because they ended her career.
Yeah.
And now she has an opportunity to get back with them with all her antics, Charlton, on the broadcast level, and nobody is calling her out. It's not up to the black athletes to speak for themselves. It's up for these white commentators to let the world know how good and dominant that they are.
Yeah, and I agree, but at the same time, you got to advocate for yourself, and because history is not going to happen.
If they don't give them a microphone, Charlton, how are they going to advocate for themselves? Yes, they go on social media and speak, but until somebody from these broadcast networks make it a daily issue to put them out there. You think they hesitate about putting Tom Brady out there because he wins another Super Bowl? No, they'll talk to him anytime he'll let them talk.
Yeah.
But they won't put Simone Biles out there. They're not seeking her out. Naomi Osaka, she's not getting a carousel of broadcast interviews. They control the airways.
Well, didn't Donald Trump tell you that black women are mean and nasty? I mean, don't think he was that was not a dog whistle, that was a foghorn, Big C. And if
didn't all those broadcast companies donate to his presidential campaign, Charles?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So know.
Why in the hell are they going to stop and advocate for black people being dominant? And when Donald Trump said send them back to Africa?
Well, because you either put your head between your tails and quit, or you get out and advocate for yourself.
They don't quit, Charleston. They go out there and they dominate on their playing surface. They haven't quit at all. They're dropping all of their opponents into submission. But it's the broadcast companies that control what they can and cannot say.
Well, we are advocating for her. I encourage her or her agent to call every TV broadcast, and you'll probably see it between the end of this month, Big C, since we're talking about it today. Call every TV broadcaster and tell them you want to give on their program. I got to say this to you. It's amazing how fast our time goes by. But there's so many times, I was talking with the Council of Elders, they have people that work in the NASA space program. They're black men, Big C. And a lot of them from down south, from the Carolinas, from Alabama to Florida, and Carolina and Virginia. And one of them is an author that's written several books, #1 bestsellers. It's a group of black mentors all over this country. And Jensen Brooks has it, Big C, in financial services, but he has it. And it's just what we're talking about right now with Simone Biles. At some point in time, we as a people, we can't sit back and wait for mainstream to do anything. There's a reason Chrissy Everett did not want to heap a lot of praise on Naomi Osaka, because she didn't look like her. And a lot of those girls get work in media. We advocate for all people. But even white girls know they have some women in media that have, I mean, I'm not trying to insult anybody, but they have no experience in the sport they're talking about covering. And I heard something and I threw it to you. This morning, as I'm always listening to stations all over the country, I've been doing that for most of my life, Big C, since I was about 8 years old. They actually had a Caucasian woman, and I'm saying the race for a reason. She sounded like she was 12 years old, but she works for the mothership. They had her call in, like I'm telling Simone Biles to do, and she was talking to these former professional black athletes that have championship rings that are on a radio show, and they were treating her like she's the expert. Big C, that doesn't make any sense, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, when white people start telling black people that they're better than them in everything that they do, then their leash is getting a little bit short on the control that they have in society and in the broadcast airways. You don't see these broadcasters calling out black athletes on the regular basis, Charleston. They talk about them and what they do. It's like you spoke a couple of weeks ago about some black athletes going in front of Congress. This has been going on for a decade in the United States, and even longer, Charleston, that black athletes have gone and spoke in front of Congress. You think they want to have those black athletes in interviews on television, Charleston, making that interviewer seem benign and dumb and not uninformed about what's going on in society? They don't bring those people on television, Charleston. Why in the hell you think they don't talk to Colin Kaepernick, but yet they talk to other quarterbacks? Because they want him to go away. Yeah. Because he stands against everything that they stand for, Charleston.
Yeah. I mean, and you're right, and I agree with you. What I also want to say is I'm only saying this because it's true. The average program now, they have black men call in for an hour show. They'll have 4 or 5 black guys call in, former athlete. Hey, we have the ex-all-star player calling in. We have the ex-world champion calling in. We have the ex-world football, basketball, baseball champion calling in. The ex-guy that won an NBA title. And the host didn't win anything. But he's Caucasian. And he's filling the time with black men. Just like Hidden Figures. They won't give these black men their own show, but they'll let you call in and make the white guy look good. And at the end of the day, he says, thanks for listening to my show. And it was all 90% black men that are calling in, telling them what's going on. And I just wonder at what point in time will our guys wake up and start doing their show and let the white guy call in, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's about being able to get on the television airways, Dolphin. If you look around, there's no black broadcasting companies in America. That is the reason why. So you get on the airways however you can. But why is it that they do not interview active players, Charlton, that are playing today? They bring in somebody who's out of the game, who has no effect on what's going on today, and they want somebody who played 20 years ago to explain what the mindset is of the current day players, regardless of the sports, Charlton. I think what they're doing is ostracizing the players now because they're more intelligent and more vampant about what's going on, whether it's contractually or whether it's socially. They do not want to put those issues on the air. So they would rather bring in somebody who is removed from the game, who is set financially, versus somebody who can have effect on people to what they're dealing with in society today.
Yeah, like you said, it's about competition. It's all competitive world. But it is ironic when men that have championship rings and they're being interviewed by somebody and they're having someone without experience, no championships, maybe just got out of high school, and they're calling her to be the expert about a game. Anyway, it's all fair level war. NBA basketball, Big C. New Jersey Nets. I'm starting to think some of that libation you were talking about is rubbing off on them. The New Jersey Nets, they've won their last 6 games. Even though they got a little bit of help when down in Los Angeles. I would just think they got some help down in Los Angeles. But Harden sold a foul. You know, Kawhi Leonard, I thought it was a fair play, but Harden sold it. I mean, he ended up on a table about 15 feet from the foul line, Big C. But he sold it. That's what good defensive players do. But think about the Nets, Big C. 5-0 on the road trip. They also beat the top teams in the West over the past week. The Lakers were without 2 starters, but the Clippers had everybody there. After experiencing some growing pains early on, they leave their longest road trip of the season thus far. They're perfect 5-0 in the process. With the help of little officials, but they earned it, Big C. Brooklyn began to answer pointed questions about just how good their defense needs to be in order to compete at the highest level. Their West Coast swing, Big C, and I'm going to throw it to you, included wins over the Lakers, again, minus 2 starters, and the LA Clippers. Maybe benefit of the doubt of some calls, but they did it. And 2 teams near the top of the Western Conference standings, whom the Nets can face off against in the NBA Finals. The Clippers had just stopped the winning streak of the Jazz. So they came to the West Coast and they represented well, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you did that introduction like a true fan. I'm going to have to get you some pom-poms in there when you talk about the teams out there in California that continues to
California love, baby.
I mean, when you look at the New Jersey Nets, they haven't been in full strength. They're without 3 players in their lineup, Charlton, and one of them is a starter, one of well-known starters. But they come out, Charlton, and they handle business. You know, they play to the level of competition. You think about their record against teams with winning records, Charlton. They are dominant. They come in, kick butt, and take names. That's what they do. And you can say they're getting help from the officials. That official was out there for the entire game, so they're seeing things both ways. You got to be able to play the game without worrying about what the officials are doing. And that's what the New Jersey Nets did. They came out to California. I think seafood is big out there in California. They saw something that was very edible called West Coast basketball.
No, they ate the Big C burger. They know it's a tasty burger, and it comes with exotic meats, and it goes great with the Budweiser Zero. It has 0% alcohol, and it goes great with the Big C burger. No, they were doing their thing. And I want to say something. You know, Kyrie Irving talked about after coming out here, whipping the Clippers 112-108. They came in with a plan to build something here in Brooklyn, even though he was in LA when he said it, Big C. I'm going to say something that I hope is not sacrilegious. Kyrie Irving, he could cross over Jesus Christ. And I'm not saying that to be sacrilegious. I know some people think about, oh, you can't say that about Jesus. But he really could, Big C. Jesus Christ also had skin the color of brass. I know that might upset Chrissy Everett, Big C, but I'm just telling you the truth. But he has a crossover that is so mean and so massive. He turned LeBron James into a ballerina when they were playing the Lakers. Turned him around a 360, Big C. He's a guy that can get his shot anywhere. I know they're saying they can't wait until Durant comes back. I know they're saying they're better with Harden on the floor. But if you got a shot that needs to be made and you got 5 seconds left and you're down by 1, I want Kyrie taking that shot because he's going to drive to the basket. He's going to get his foul, or he's going to get the basket no matter who's guarding him, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I have to flip that over to James Harden. And when you think about James Harden's shooting percentage from the floor, he's one of the most dominant players in the NBA, and he always is able to draw a foul going to the basket, as you were just crying about Kawhi Leonard, getting hit with the foul trying
he
to
was robbed.
James Harden. But, I mean, this team right now, you got to pick your poison. I mean, they got a bunch of assassins on this team.
Yeah, they are good, and I was telling you that they need a big guy, and I still believe they do need a bigger guy that can play hard. I know you say DeAndre Jordan is doing his thing, but it's just a matter. I know Joel Embiid, they got had when they lost their final game, but I can't wait until we see what happens, especially in the Eastern Conference. I still think when the Lakers...
Look at this team, Charlton.
Yeah.
There was no preseason, realistically,
that's
for
right.
the New Jersey Nets.
Yeah.
James Harden just got there last weekend, okay?
Yeah.
And so Kevin Durant's been in and out of the lineup as well as Kyrie Irving. This team has not played together for a month. Think about how well they are gelling and how good they are getting, and they've only been together for basically a month. So all the other teams had a head start against this team, Charlton. So think about how strong they're going to be in another 2 months.
Yeah, they're good. I mean, there's nothing knocking them. But I think, like Deion Sanders says, we was robbed. That's what Kawhi Leonard said. We was robbed, Big C, and it happened on TV. That was not a foul. But he sold it, Harden sold it. It's all fair and level war. I want to also take you to the team from the East Coast that many people thought, at least for the past couple of years, that would be the team that everyone's talking about a championship. That's the Boston Celtics. And you think about this. You are what your record says you are. After the Boston Celtics dropped to a 15-15 marks, thanks to I think it just bad basketball collapse in the Big C on Sunday afternoon down in New Orleans, a 121-15 loss at the hands of New Orleans Pelicans. After leading by as many as 24 points in the second half, certainly you could say it applies to Boston. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is a team that's been struggling as of late. I mean, they just, when you give up a 24-point lead to the Pelicans, a team that's sub 500, Charlton, that really speaks for where you are. The disenchantment of the lineup, Charlton, they got to get some guys that are playing together. But they had no answer for the Big Z, Zion.
Yeah. Yep, he's the Big Z, all right. Hey, Boston looks a lot better without Kyrie Irving. Don't they, Big C? That's what they were playing about last. If we could just get rid of Kyrie, we'd be all right. If you can't win with Kyrie Irving, something's wrong with you. It's all fair and level war. But the Celtics, they got moments of brilliance from Jason Tatum. I think he's going to be a superstar. Jaylen Brown, who even off days is still combined to score 57 points, that dynamic duo. Meanwhile, they did not get much from everyone else, as the rest of the team managed only 58 points while shooting 4 of 20 for three-point range. They were saying that their head coach, Bradley Stevens, is a great coach, Big C. But I'm going to say this thing to you, because everybody talks about black men can't get interviews in the NBA, can't get jobs, even interviews. They got rid of Kyrie Irving, and they were saying they'll be a better team without him. If you get rid of Kyrie, and Kyrie's going, they're at the top of the mountaintop, even though they're a half game behind Philadelphia, at some point in time, does Boston and Danny Ainge start looking at who they got at the helm that sent a guy like Kyrie Irving packing? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, they sent Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward package off, the two solidifiers in that offense that they had last year. But I guess they felt it was stunning the development of the younger players in the roster. But you don't realize that you need leadership on a team.
Yeah.
Those two veteran players brought that to the Boston Celtics. Now they're out there, guys, and trying to figure out who's going to be the leader of the pack.
Yeah, who's on first, Big C. Minnesota Timberwolves hired Toronto Raptors assistant Chris Finch as their franchise new coach Monday. Timberwolves president of basketball operations, Grayson Ross, fired Ryan Sanders on Sunday, clearing the way for Minnesota. And an interim head coach has quickly moved in toward hiring a full-time replacement. He's informed Saunders of the decision after a 103-99 loss at the New York Knicks, Big C, and that left the Timberwolves at 7 wins, 24 losses. That's the worst record in the NBA, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Saunders has held on for the last 2.5 seasons based on nepotism, Charlton. His dad, Flip Saunders, had been the coach of the organization for a few years. They let him go because he was a perennial loser. Now they're letting his son go because he's a perennial loser. I mean, This is what happens when you just don't go out there and you bring in the best man for the job.
Yeah.
Minnesota also a little justification. They've been without their top two players. You know, Young and Anthony Towns, Charlton, they have not been playing. They've only been on the court for 7 games combined this year, Charlton. So that's not a formula for success. I don't care who you are.
No, not a formula for success, but they'll figure it out eventually, Big C. I want to just bounce to the world, thoughts and prayers. Obviously, everything's going to be okay. Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin tests positive for COVID-19. Says he feels fine. He's going to go through some rest and do all the NFL protocol. So I know he's going to be back on his feet very soon, Big C. Also, I want to say congratulations. Congratulations to touchdown Patrick Mahomes and his fiancee. They gave birth. They say they gave birth, but I think his fiancee was the only one giving birth. His fiancee, they gave birth to a beautiful little baby girl. And rumor has it, coming out of Kansas City, the first word she said, she told her dad she can catch better than those receivers that he had in the Super Bowl, Big C.
Well, Charlton don't look like she'll be playing quarterback in the NFL.
Yes, all fair in Leavenworth War. It's funny. He's got to practice on how to get some sleep or doing that quick sleep, maybe 10 minutes at a time, and then waking up. It's all fair in Leavenworth War. And I look forward to a lot of things happening in the world of sports. Chrissy Everett, and again, it's not just me. I was watching the Australian Open. I don't think I went to bed till like 3 o'clock in the morning, Big C. But I was just listening to her, how she was trying to coach whoever was listening for Jennifer Brady as how she could beat Naomi Osaka. It was embarrassing for a major network to have one of your top broadcasters. It's okay to talk about what you see, but she was trying to tell Brady what she needs to do as if she was talking to somebody in a microphone, and she kept looking up at her coaches as if, what did Everett tell us to do? What she tell me to do? But Naomi was serving the ball so hard, it didn't matter what Chris Everett told her team, Big C.
Well, Charlton, when you're going to lose, you're going to lose. And like I said, that's the history of Chris Everett when you watch her on television against minority opponents.
Yeah, it was pretty blatant, but sometimes it doesn't count against her. It's all fair and level more. I appreciate everyone in Black History Month. I hope everybody down in the state of Texas are doing fine. I know the great Jerry Jones is doing fine as Texas freezes and Ted Cruz takes his family down to Mexico. I guess they didn't build the wall high enough, Big C, because Ted Cruz ended up down there anyway, Big C. But think about it. He's making a lot of money, and people can make money. Texas continues to go days without power and heat. And I really hope that the people of Great Texas can do fine. Comstock Resources selling gas at prices ranging from $15 per 1,000 cubic feet to $179 per 1,000 cubic feet. A makeup of more than 600% to 7,500%. That was pre-crisis levels, Big C. Sometimes these corporations, and no matter who, Jones is making money as a businessman, but corporations take advantage of people as everybody's praying and giving out thoughts and prayers, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, see, Charlton, that's allowed by the governor of Texas to allow the gouging of the citizens during hardship. And yet they're going to ask the federal government for relief.
Yep.
Financial relief for a Republican-run state, a poorly publicly run state. But Jerry Jones, the people of Texas built his stadium down there in Austin, yet he wants to tell everybody that he paid for it, but they donated $250 million to build AT&T Stadium over a decade ago down there, Charlton.
Yeah.
And here's Jerry Jones during the roughest of times in Texas when people really need relief. Here it is, he's gouging them on their power bills down there. I saw today where one veteran, Charlton, retiree on his pension, was hit with a power bill of $16,000.
Wow.
Over $16,000. A veteran. We talk about veterans committing suicide at the beginning of our show. Here's Jerry Jones, just like most Republicans, don't give a damn about the veterans of the United States.
Yeah, but he does care about his pocketbook. You can care about your pocketbook too. It's all fair level war. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Float like a butterfly? Sting like a bee? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm wondering how many of those cases of water that Ted Cruz passed along to the back of his car while he was down there faking like he was caring about the citizens of Texas. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They cared about everybody in Texas that they service.
They care about everybody, and you can too. Always rise and shine. Every day, rise and shine. You can rise and shine every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.